Gamer tags are a very cool, weird aspect of gaming culture. Think about when else you've ever heard it be normal to give yourself another name. Not to legally rename yourself, mind you, not to be given a nickname by someone else, not to receive an official title, but to just be known to one group of people as a name you came up with that's entirely different from your legal one. For them not to even know your legal one at all a lot of the time, even if they're pretty close to you. Also, the name isn't just for identification purposes, it's significantly more expressive than a typical person's given or chosen legal name, and comes from a much larger pool of available words, and more than just words, can consist of entire phrases, be an acronym, include numbers or punctuation marks. It can, in a lot of ways, be more of a representation of the person than their name actually is. That is, a representation of who they were when they came up with the name, in middle school. That's one catch to the whole system. As soon as you first pick a tag, that's how you're known by that community. Just as we don't change our given names for just any reason, it can be difficult to change a gamer tag once we've become known in a gaming community, because people have had a very long time practicing the association between who you are and what your tag is. Back in the early 2010s, one of the best Super Smash Bros. Melee players in the world, a genius of the game and a very wise individual respected for his intellect and philosophy, carried the tag Dr. PP. See, one time in middle school, he spilled orange juice on his pants, and somehow that unfortunate nickname emerged and seemed like a funny thing to call himself when he started entering video game tournaments. When you've gotten good enough at the game to beat Mewtwo, King Mango, and Armada, it's hard to get people to forget what you've called yourself the entire time you've been doing it. People end up giving themselves all sorts of issues with their gamer tags. Pokimane is actually a great example of this, because Pokimane isn't how her tag is really supposed to be pronounced. Her name is Iman, spelled just like it is in her tag, so Poke Iman was a cute little pun, except it was also confusing. If someone is talking about what they like to watch on Twitch, and they say, I watch a lot of Pokemon, if you respond, oh, she's great, love her streams, that could be really confusing if they meant they're a big Wolfie fan. She tends to just have people stick to Pokey these days, and the mispronunciation Pokimane is more common, not just out of ignorance, but to avoid this confusion. Another common problem comes from earlier generations of gaming culture when Leetspeak was, unfortunately, a thing. You've probably seen Leetspeak, derived from the word elite, or at least some evolution of it if you've been around online gaming for a while. But it's the substitution of certain numbers and other symbols for what would normally just be letters to create speech that's written in the same language but looks different. It originated in hacker communities, possibly as a way of getting around censorship of terms like hacking, and was seen as a sign that the user was something of an insider in that community, someone who understood the culture and who knew their way around a computer well enough to, say, substitute ASCII characters into their writing even though they didn't appear on a standard keyboard. But by the time it came to gaming communities, look, I have strong opinions about this, so take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, but in my entire experience with it, it was very dumb. It was a silly way of making people feel like they were above less initiated players because they knew that on the internet people put _420_XX after their Halo gamer tags. And if you didn't, that means you were a huge noob and you were going to get pwned in that game. There's a similar, though less juvenile tendency to put various symbols people have access to on the Nintendo keyboards in their Splatoon tags. So, for example, using the Greek letter alpha instead of the English letter A. Now, I don't tend to see people putting each other down over not being elite enough, and some of these are fine, perfectly redeemable names, just, with a different twist. But if people become really adamant about that letter alpha being in their tag on Discord and Battlefy and everywhere, now I, Mr. Tournament Organizer Man, go to try and contact you by searching your name in the tournament Discord server, and one of two things happens. I either type the letter A because the name is pronounced as though it's an English letter A, and that's how I know you. You don't show up because A is not the letter you typed your name with, and I go, they're not in the Discord, must have dropped out, I guess. Alright, other team, you get a bye. Or I know it starts with alpha, look down at my keyboard like, where's the alpha key? and then spend a whole minute Googling ASCII characters and scroll around to find the character to copy and paste into the Discord search window just so I can type the first letter of your gamertag. Another unfortunate internetism is having a ton of numbers at the end of a tag. If you're B-Dog and all your friends call you B-Dog and you've been B-Dog online everywhere and then you get on a big game or social media platform and it hits you with, this username is already taken. So you try the Leetspeak approach and replace the A with a 4, but this username is already taken. So you try B-Dog1 and this username is already taken. Sometimes you end up at BDog819375, and as gross as that looks, sometimes people are stubborn enough to decide to go with that. What boggles the mind further is when people don't need to do all that, but decide they really like a certain 6-digit number no one but them is going to remember, much less use when referring to them, and put it at the end as an aesthetic choice. See, it's important for a name to be somewhat memorable and unique to really create an online identity. There are a ton of Michaels and Yasmins and Adityas and Jesuses and Jessicas out there, but we get away with that because we as humans only have so many people we know in person, and we have faces and personalities and memories of interactions with the person we know to associate with those names. In a streamer's overflowing Twitch chat, though, where all there is to work with is written text, and Sonic Fan 0013 and Sonic Fan 01234 both made their text color blue, because of course they did, they're probably not setting themselves apart from each other very well. It's not completely unheard of for people to use their first names as their tags, especially with very common, difficult-to-trace names, or people who came up from very local, close-knit communities. I don't personally recommend it, as it's far less anonymous that way. Any information someone has on you narrows the range of possible individuals exponentially. There have been some players who interface with larger competitive communities using their first names as tags, but these tend to either be fairly casual or the very best players in the world with those names, because otherwise it gets to a point where they run into a better-known Connor or Alan, and they aren't going to win the 1v1 over who's better known by that name. Good luck getting the tag Zane as a melee player anytime soon. There are even some plays off first names that run people into doppelgangers. I must have encountered a double-digit number of women named Allie who decided to become Alley Cat at this point. It's clever, but it comes just a little too easily. When it's just a first name by itself, though, I figure most of them in Splatoon are putting in their name in the family switch, where it makes sense to have a profile for Dad, Mom, Isabella, and you. It'd feel out of place for it to be Dad, Mom, Isabella, and Blood Demon. That's not to say I can exactly recommend Blood Demon either. It's an aesthetic taste, obviously, but I think in the same vein as players who used Leetspeak to show how capable they were of poning noobs, some players go overboard with edgy aesthetics because of the old stereotype that that's what competitive gaming is like. It gives off the vibe of a Splatoon clips montage set to Doom Eternal music. Like, it just doesn't really fit with this game as well as it would in, like, Quake or something. To my taste, the best tags are either short and punchy or clever enough to be worth pronouncing all the way through instead of shortening. Shroud is the gold standard. Big fan of Rat, Taj, Bagel, Biscuit, Mango, Uzi, and Borp. But also, I can spare extra syllables for creativity. Inky Minaj, if you're out there, I smile every time I see your tag in a multiplayer lobby. In an oddly similar vein, I saw a Morgana Freeman in League of Legends once, which was fantastic. Remember Dr. PP? There are only 4 characters that you can fit into the tag above a character's head in Melee. DRPP immediately comes to mind, but PPMD was so clever that he switched to just using that as his tag when he got sponsored by Evil Geniuses in 2014. While I'm the last person to get behind changing your tag in most cases, I will grant him the very rare exceptional vote of approval on that one. If you're thinking of joining a community and coming up with a tag for the first time, I hope this helps you out. And if your old tag is offensive or juvenile or just way too cringe to bear sticking with, okay, I'll grant you one redo. But make it a good enough rebrand that you're willing to stick with it into your days shaking down fellow retirees for 1v1s in the nursing home. I'ma be the sickest Melee player Shady Oaks has ever seen, dude.